Howdy, folks. Hope you're keeping well. In today's English video lesson, we're going to learn more vocabulary words with Dr. Peterson and Piers Morgan. I hope you enjoyed this one too.
In the story of Noah, to return to the book a minute, there's a scene when after Noah brings the ark successfully to shore, he plants a vineyard and brews up some wine and then proceeds to get rip-roaring drunk.
The first word of the lesson is rip-roaring. Rip-roaring. This is an adjective and it means lively, full of energy. So he gets rip-roaring drunk. Drunk, but not in a quiet way, in a loud way. Rip-roaring, rip-roaring. It's a good adjective to learn.
You could maybe imagine he was entitled to after his adventure, and his son Ham comes along and sees him.
He says that he was entitled. He's suggesting that it was justified. The fact that this person got drunk was justified. He was celebrating. He was entitled to getting rip-roaring drunk.
Splayed out in his tent naked.
He was splayed out in his tent. So the word splay means to spread out. For instance, if you lie on your back, splayed out, you put your arms out. And this is to splay your arms out, to splay. Pay attention to the first sound especially.
And thinks that's pretty damn comical. And to see your father naked is to see the vulnerability of your father and maybe even his proclivity for misbehavior.
Even his proclivity for misbehavior. A couple good words there. One is proclivity, which is someone's tendency towards something that could be negative, could potentially be disapproving. So this is proclivity for something. For instance, their proclivity for taking drugs. Proclivity. It is kind of like a tendency, an inclination for something which is negative. Let's go back and hear a couple of these words again.
Roaring drunk, which you could maybe imagine he was entitled to after his adventure. And his son Ham comes along and sees him splayed out in his tent naked and thinks that's pretty damn comical. And to see your father naked is to see the vulnerability of your father and maybe even his proclivity for misbehavior. And Ham brings his other brothers along to have a good joke at the old man. And the other brothers walk backwards into the tent and cover him with a blanket. And then Noah gets wind of what Ham has done.
To get wind of something is to find out something or to obtain a piece of information. So this is something which a person hears about, perhaps a piece of information that they are not supposed to know about, to get wind of something, So for example, I got wind of the fact that a couple of students had cheated on the exam. I heard this piece of information, but perhaps this was not something that was shared with a lot of people. So let's go back and hear that wonderful expression again.
The other brothers walk backwards into the tent and cover him with a blanket. And then Noah gets wind of what Ham has done. And he brings all the sons in and he says to his son Ham, who laughed at him, he says, because you have no respect for your father, your children will be the servants of slaves forever. And this is a very interesting curse, because what it means is that if you fail to respond to what your ancestors offer you, your father, let's say in particular, with gratitude and love, then you will fail to embody the spirit of your ancestors. And
to fail to embody the spirit of your ancestors, to embody is to contain, to represent something, to embody all the qualities, to contain all the qualities that are associated with the spirit, with the essence of your ancestors. Let's pronounce this word together, embody. Embody the spirit of your ancestors.
Your children will in consequence become the slaves of servants. And that's exactly right. It's exactly right. And so it was interesting to watch my wife, develop extreme gratitude for what her father had offered her. I really liked, his name was Del Roberts. I really liked Del. He was a bigger than life character, something like Trump on a smaller scale, bombastic and
Bombastic refers to usually speech that is supposed to sound exaggerated. Maybe this person says things that are not always literally true, but they use this language in order to impress others or to provoke some sort of reaction. Bombastic. Bombastic. It's a good adjective to learn. Let's go back and hear this again.
Offered her. I really liked, his name was Del Roberts. I really liked Del. He was a bigger than life character, something like Trump on a smaller scale, bombastic and entrepreneurial. And
let's pronounce the word entrepreneurial correctly. This is a tricky word to get right. So I'll break down the pronunciation for you. Entrepreneurial. Pay attention to the stress pattern. We probably know what the word entrepreneur is. This is a person who usually starts some sort of business that hasn't been tried before on their own. And entrepreneurial is the adjective, entrepreneurial.
That spirit of the benevolent Father, that's associated with divinity, of course, in the biblical texts. And
the spirit of benevolence. Benevolence is the quality of being very forgiving and kind. Benevolent. Benevolent is the adjective. Sometimes they say benevolent and merciful together. Benevolent.
Understanding how that spirit transmits itself down the generations is part of what stabilizes society itself. And I was very fortunate, my father, I knew, and my mother as well, my parents were 100% behind the best part of me. Unbelievably useful. And that's something I've been able to offer many people, as, what would you say, an abstract or virtualized father. And that's a great honor. There isn't anything better that can happen to you than that.
Jordan, how have you're a strong man and you're an emotional man. I've seen that again today, and I've seen that many times with you. But to lose both your parents in the space of 6 months at your age is I'm very fortunate. Both my parents are still alive. I spent the weekend with them. It's a huge moment in your life, isn't it? How are you dealing with it?
Well, my brother and my sister were there with me when my father died. And, we've drawn more closely together in consequence of that, the shared loss. And I saw that happen with Tammy when her mom and dad died, that her family drew together. And Tammy, for example, is...
To draw together is to get closer to someone. So he is suggesting that in the wake of his father's passing, he has become even closer to his relatives and immediate family members, to draw closer.
Established a much better relationship with her older brother, and that was not a substitute for her father, obviously, but a very positive alternative. And so we've found solace in each other, my sister and my...
Solace is a great word. Sometimes when something bad has occurred, we seek solace. We look for something to comfort us, to perhaps ease our pain. Let's pronounce it together. Solace. And if you want to read more example sentences, please check out the description. Thanks for watching.